Car's fresh from the paint booth. Now what do you do? If you want to learn the step-by-step process on what it takes to do the final sanding and buffing on your cars, be it restoration or collision, come inside today and we'll break down a step-by-step process on everything that you need to know to take your cars from outhouse to penthouse. We have a bumper from a 1969 Plymouth Roadrunner that we painted. This is a full-blown rotisserie restoration / custom job. This has got a lot of product on it, 4 big coats of clear. Our philosophy on this guy is very different than the BMW behind us. This is a collision job. Our philosophy back here is to keep the factory peel the same, remove the couple pieces of dirt, and spot polish it so when it's done, we return it to pre-accident condition, no better, no worse. The philosophy on the bumper is to make it 100% flat, no runs, no dirt, no orange peel, and still maintain enough clear so it looks deep and it lasts the test of time. If you continue to watch the video, we will break down step by step for the collision / production job versus the restoration / custom job. David and I spent a lot of time and money creating this info. We hope that it's helpful to you. Please comment and let us know what you like about our processes and what you don't like. I'm curious to know that what you do differently from us too. Please like, follow, and subscribe because it really helps our page and it really helps us create more content. This paint job is about 30 days old, so it's nice and dry and cured, and as I said before, there's 4 big coats of clear on it. We use PPG's 50/50, which is formerly called 8152, and we're gonna start off super aggressive. Believe it or not, we're starting with 600 grit. We're gonna use 6 different sanding steps and then 3 different buffing steps to achieve the ultimate finish. We're actually gonna work in some dry guide coat too. But step 1 is make sure it's clean. This is pretty clean. I don't necessarily have to wash and dry this part or hit it with soap and water, but if your part was filthy, you would have to do that. If there was grease or wax on it, you'd have to do it. Ours had a little bit of dust, so I just take my blowgun, I blow it off, and I'm using a product called Final Inspection by Meguiar's. All I have to do is spray this stuff on after I got the dust off of it, and I can actually wipe it off. It's water soluble, it's not a wax or anything like that, and it'll actually let me see my work better. So that's really the first step before we ever start sanding. Normally I'll start with 600 with a hard block, but with this bumper we got a couple huge pieces of dirt in here. 600 would definitely level it, but I think that there's a better way to do things. You can even use this trick with collision for denibbing and finessing. We've all used this tool, and this tool works well, but our friends at Eastwood have created a better mousetrap. This is an all aluminum body. It still has the tungsten blade on it. I like it because I can handle it a little bit better, but it actually has a smooth side to it that I can put sandpaper in, especially for the collision industry. But I will use this to actually shave my big pieces of dirt. So all I have to do is put this guy down, use a slight angle, and it will actually just shave the piece of dirt off. Now, it won't get it 100% out, but it will save you time and it will make the process go smoother. So these are great little tools to invest in. We're done using our Eastwood denibbing tool. We're ready to start sanding. But before we go to that point, we got to figure out what type of sandpaper we're going to use. And I'm not talking about manufacturer. I'm talking about grit, and I'm talking about what block it's going to go on. We're going 600 grit, wet or dry. We'll get to that in a minute. Then we're going to go 1,000 wet, 1,500 wet, and then we're going to use the 3M Trizact system, which is 3,000 grit, 5,000 grit, and 8,000 grit, but we're not going to use it on a Dynabrade with an interface pad like everyone else does. So those steps are going to be completely unique. Now, sandpaper selection is important. Wet sanding paper is this 9x11 in 3M, and they call it a sleeve. But when you get to 1,000 grit or above, it's 5.5 by 9, but they still call this a sleeve. So if you're buying sandpaper, know that they are a little bit different sizes. 3M also makes this dry sandpaper in the same 9x11 format. And if you're dry sanding, this is great. If you're not, you might want to use the rolls. Sticky back can go on any block. If you don't have that, it's a little bit primitive, but you can actually use a piece of DA paper, cut it down or whatnot. We have a lot of blocks that we're going to use today. In a later video, we're putting the 10 best block companies up against each other. So we'll cover the blocks and the selection at a later date. If you're going to start with 600 dry, you definitely want a good hard block. I'm unfortunately using a piece of DA paper. You want to make sure it's tight. You want to make sure it's flat, and you always want to wear your dust mask. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm not going to go in line like this. I'm going to be doing a 45-degree angle, and I have to make sure that I'm not burning body lines. What most people like about the 600 dry is it's faster and they have better visibility. So let's see how it goes. There's some heavy stamping around this too, so we should be able to take most of that out. I got it tight. And it's kind of like guide coat. You can actually see if you have any dirt or anything like that. So this step, you can see that heavy stamping right here. So I want to take all of that out. You want to have a paper towel or a microfiber or something to keep your sandpaper clean. Even an old Scotch-Brite works really well. But this step, you want to get all of your dirt, all of your peel out, so it's 100% flat. With wet sanding, the great thing about wet sanding is I can lose this thing. Traditionally, I do wet sand this process, but the dry sanding does work really well. Again, I have to start with a hard block. You cannot have a block that's a soft block or a block that has any rigidity to it. So I have a hard block here. I'm going to wrap my paper tight. I can use a spray bottle for water or a microfiber or a paper towel. I want to wet the area, and then I'm doing the same concept. I'm doing a 45-degree slow overlap, and I'm putting light pressure. So I can't really tell what I'm doing. That's the problem with wet sanding. So now I'm going to have to take a water blade or a squeegee to see what it looks like. You can see how flat it gets it, and it gets it flat fast. So I want to do the entire bumper with 600 wet and make it perfect before we move on, and make sure you're not burning your edges, because it will happen very quick with this aggressive of a sandpaper. So we did 2 small areas in our bumper with 600. I wanted to show you the difference between 600 wet. If you notice, it's a nice uniform machine look. And then on the 600 dry, it looks a little bit rougher. All right, and again, we're only doing a small area. Notice this area right here. We took it out on this side, but we left it on this side. So that's that clear stamping we're talking about. We're not just removing dirt, we're removing any waves or clear stamping. Now, typically I would wet sand everything, but with the modern advancements and blocks and sandpaper, I got to admit, if you're not dry sanding this first step, you're sleeping on it. This was way faster, way easier, and with the fact that I wasn't using water, my visibility was there. The problem is you need good quality sandpaper, and you need the right sandpaper, and you have to keep it clean. The old school trick is just to wipe it on your pant leg as you sand and it clogs up. That works. You can take a gray Scotch-Brite and knock it off, but high quality sandpaper, be it wet or dry, is always going to work. And this is the first time I've ever used this block, but our friends from Next Level Block in Canada make a really sweet block. It's hard on one side and soft on the other, and this is going to be part of our blocking demo that's coming up in the future. So we've got both of them in 600. All right, and again, the reason why we did one side in wet and one side in dry is because there's going to be a lot of people who hate on the dry. I don't care which way you do it. All right, traditionally I do it this way. I think this way is worth looking into. My next step is going to be blow it off real good. All right, and I want to wax and grease it. Now here's the thing, I'm not waxing and greasing it because I'm worried about wax and grease. You have to blow it off 100% clean, wipe it off, and then shoot it with wax and grease and make sure this is 100% clean. I want to get all of that clear coat that's laying in those scratches. The problem with starting with something aggressive like 600 grit is you got to get all those scratches out, or when you go to buffing, it's going to be a nightmare. We have that solved for you if you just pay attention to these little steps. Why don't I start with 1,000 grit? I hear a lot of people, oh, I start with 1,500, I start with 1,000. You're wasting your time. Even 800 will not make it 100% flat. Maybe to you it will, but if you look down the side of that car, 600 is probably the only grit that's going to get it 100% flat. 800 is questionable. 1,000 grit or higher, maybe for collision, but not for show cars or restoration. It is not going to make it 100% flat. It's not going to remove all those orange peels. So now that this guy is done and has been waxed and greased, I actually like to gas it off a little bit to make sure that there's no solvent kind of laying in the cracks, because I have to make sure that my dry guide coat gets in 100% of the scratches or I'm in trouble. Everybody likes the 3M black dry guide coat, so do I. Black guide coat does not work well on a black car. It does not work well on a dark car. We're using Merca, sorry 3M, and this stuff works really well. It's less money, there's more in it. It is a little chunkier, but I don't mind that. What I'm gonna do is take this guide coat, and this is white, and I'm really gonna work it in. I'm not just gonna do a quickie. I'm gonna work it in to make sure every nook and cranny, every scratch is filled. You have to be methodical with this step, because if you miss one scratch, it's gonna be a nightmare later in life. So you have to be super, super particular with this process. We got our guide coat on and we worked it in really well. If you have a lot of extra guide coat laying on the top, I like to take a little bit of compressed air and blow it off. And now we're doing 1,000 grit hard block. I like to pre-wet it. The cool thing about this guide coat is look at how it changes from this view to that view. The cool thing about using dry guide coat on your clear coat is I don't over sand the clear, which possibly I could punch through or remove too many mils, waste time, waste money, but I don't under sand the clear, where at the end of the day, I buff it and oh my God, I got 1,000 grit scratches or 600 grit scratches. So these are good training wheels. Again, hard block, and I'm doing that 45-degree angle. Everyone always teaches that you got to do the X out. I'm not against it. But if you go a 45-degree angle one way, it does work. Here's a little curveball for you. With your 600, do a 45-degree angle this way, and then with your 1,000 grit, do a 45-degree 100 the opposite way. That way you can really tell if you get the sand scratches out. So I'll just work this area. I am pitching the block just a little bit to work this curve in the bumper, and then later I'll actually come in and run it flat, because by pitching the block ever so slightly, I'm putting a little dish in it. It looks like I'm good. No, there's a lot of scratches there. You have to work 100% of those scratches out before we move to the next step. We're done with the 1,000 grit. The next step is to make sure that it's 100% clean and 100% dry. Remember to always use the wax and grease remover before you go and put the dry guide coat on. So really get all of that sanding smut out of all of the cracks. And again, what I like to do is to take a blow gun and blow it off and degas it a little bit. I don't want those solvents laying in the scratches, and then I go to put my guide coat on there and the guide coat doesn't make it deep enough, and then when I go to polishing that I've got a little bit of a scratch. So I blow it off really good on both sides, and then I go to my powdered guide coat. Now the cool thing is this is the last time I'm going to do it, because we're moving to 1500 grit with a soft block, or at least a semi-rigid soft block. I've already did 2 rounds of hard block. If you don't have it flat by now, you're never going to do it. But I want to move this on really good. The reason why this is the last round of this is because in the olden days, we used to buff out 1500 grit. So I don't need to use guide coat for the 3000 grit or anything higher. It just takes away from it. Would it hurt to do it? No, but I'm not going to do any of that. So I've got my 1000 grit scratches completely covered with guide coat. I work it in really good. I like to use the blow gun to blow off a little bit of excess. I know the boost's not on, but you know, we don't want all that noise, so I like to blow off the excess. Then I'm going to come in. You can see that my paper's been pre-soaked. It's nice and curly. It's nice and soft. I got a block that could be soft or semi-rigid, and I'm going to just basically do tight circles. You could do your 45 crossout technique if you wanted, but I typically will do tight circles here to actually smooth out all the scratches and get this card nice and shapely again. So that's all I need to do with the 1500 grit, and technically I could go to polishing, but we're going to do a couple more steps after that. We got this side done in 1500 wet. Technically, we could go and buff it right now with the compound and it would be fine. That's the way I did it for the first 20 years of my career. We're gonna do it a different way. If you look at this side, we've already came in and we've used 3000 grit. A lot of people say, oh, you don't need to do that, you don't need to do that. From my experience, it's a huge time saver, and it improves the quality of the overall finish. What do I mean by that? Compound is expensive, labor is expensive. If I buy one of these discs, I might be able to do an entire small car. If I'm just doing collision, I could do multiple jobs. If I'm doing a large vehicle, let's say they're $7-8 a piece, and it takes 2 of these discs in an hour. The money and labor I spent is going to save me way more time on the polishing, the compound steps, and it's going to produce a better finish. If you don't want to do it, you don't have to. Historically, what we would do is we would put this on a finish sander and we would go over it. A lot of guys would even use an interface pad, which is a little squishy pad, put this on, and then that way if there's some curvature, it doesn't dig in. They even have little mini DAs and buffers that you can actually use, and you could use the 3000. That's not what we're doing. All right, that might be fine in collision. What we're going to do is we're going to still take that semi-rigid block, not a plexiglass block, and we're going to actually come in, wet this guy up, and we're actually going to block this guy out. Does it take more work? Yes, but there's no way I'm going to put an orbital sander on any show cars, pre-paint or even post-paint. So I'm going to actually do this by hand. Let's say I was doing a large hood. It would probably take me maybe 30 minutes with this step. Now we're going to jump to the 5000 and 8000 and the same process, and it actually does a really nice finish when it's done. We finished the 3000 grit on this side, and you could go right to polish on it. On this side, we did the 5000 and 8000. you can see how this looks like you almost ran a buffer over it. I really like these steps. It doesn't take that much time. The old schoolers are gonna hate it. When it first came out, I didn't like it either till I tried it on a few cars, and I think it's time well spent. Again, you can buff over 1500 grit. If you wanna go to 3 or 5 or 8, that's up to you. We go all the way to 8,000. Now, we typically in collision use a 2 or 3 step buffing system. On this bumper, we're gonna use a 4-step. No, we're not trying to make it more complicated, but with the 3M system, you use the white pad with the white compound. And 3M even makes it easy where it says number 1. So that's traditionally your first step. Your second step is the black pad with the black compound, or gray with gray, if you will. And it even says number 2. And then the last step, the number 3, is the Ultra Fina. This is like a breathable non-wax wax. This step rocks. I love this step. There's a little trick to get used to it, but we'll show you how to work it in. That's traditionally the 3-step system from 3M. We have to add another step. Now, this is going back in time, but this is a PPG approved operation. We're gonna start with a wool pad for a couple of reasons. One, this is very, very high-end clear that's old, and it would take you forever to hit it with a white pad and compound. What we're gonna do is use our woolly mammoth here, our wool pad, and we're gonna actually start with that first, the same compound, and get it a good 90% or better before we move to our wool pad. Do you need to do this with collision? Probably not, especially if you're using soft clear or the clear is only a day or 2 old. This is a glamour clear that's extremely expensive, extremely durable, it's extremely rock hard, and it's a month old. So if you're dealing with harder clears or older clears, bring back the wool pad. It's a good step. Here's a good trick for all you custom painters and restoration guys. I started with 4 coats of clear. All right, did I remove 1 coat? Did I remove 2 coats? Oh, I don't know. Well, I have a mill gauge, so I can actually come in and hit this guy, and I know exactly where I'm at. Right now, I'm at 16.2 mils, which is pretty thick. By the time I do all of my sanding and my buffing, I will remove around 2 mils, and I'll have over 2 mils of clear left. Is it an overkill? Probably. But if you're trying to do really, really high-end stuff and you want to know how much film thickness you have, mill gauges are only $100 right now for lower-end ones. My first step is going to be the 3M compound, step 1, and I'm using the wool pad, aka the woolly mammoth. If you're just used to using foam compound pads, you got to watch out. This is going to throw a lot more lint and create a lot more dust and a lot more heat. So be careful with this. I'm just going to spread some compound down. I'm going to take my pad and my buffer, and I'm just going to work it back and forth. You want to make sure to get all of the scratches out, at least in the compounding stage. We're going to use 2 steps of compounding. Step 1 with the wool pad, step 2 with the foam pad. All of the scratches have to be gone before we move on. So here's our 8,000 grit, and this is what it looks like after we did our initial wool pad. You can see there's some hazing in it, but there should be no scratch marks or no dull marks. We only sanded and buffed this little area in here. Now we're going to come in and we're going to use the foam pad in the same step 1 compound, and we're going to trick it out. After I'm done with my compound, I always get it clean. You can do it with soap and water if you wish. As you know, I like the final inspection. If I'm doing an overall paint job on a car and I'm kind of a messy buffer, I'm throwing compound everywhere, what I'll do is I'll just get out the power washer and I'll wash the car. Yes, you can see where that little denibber was still there. We didn't buff that area yet. We're just showing the small little area, but this is what the compound area should look like. It almost looks like it's been glazed. The next step will be the black. So I'll get my pad, I'll come in here. You want to use very little machine glaze, just a couple little drops. You don't need a lot. It's not like compound where you throw a bunch down. And I always pretend it's wax and I just work it in. And this should really bring the shine up. I can actually shave in it right now. It's completely flat, completely glossy. Most people would ship it at this stage. I like to go one extra level, and this is more of a protectant than anything, but I like step 3 on the bottle. This is actually our step 4. This is the Ultra Fina. So again, this stuff is just like the glaze. You don't use as much as you would the compound, but this stuff will never burn off. It'll just keep smearing and smearing. When we're done with this step, we'll have to use the final inspection in a clean microfiber to wipe the residue off, and then we can ship it. So that's it. We started with this and we made it like this. With a couple easy steps and some patience and some practice, you too can get a flawless paint job every time. Here's how we want to tackle a production paint job. We do not want to do a full flat sand and wheel. This is more of a denib and finesse. When this vehicle was sprayed, we matched the peel on it perfectly. If we come in here with a big old Dynabraid and start sanding it and making everything flat, what's going to happen is there's going to be less peel on this and it's not going to match the texture. But this job actually came out pretty dirty for us. We have a couple pieces of dirt down here and then a monster piece of dirt up high. The license plate will cover it and most people would say, oh, I wouldn't take that out. We're going to take it out. Remember, our philosophy is return it to pre-accident condition, no better, no worse. So we're going to do a couple steps in sanding. We're going to start off with our Eastwood denibber tool. We're going to shave that guy down. Instead of using the big old 6-inch Dynabraid to leave a bunch of areas flat, we're going to come in with our mini guy and this little Kovacs block. We're going to start with 1200 grit. That's going to refine the scratches that the denibber made. The 1500 will refine the 1200, and then we can use a little Trizac 3000 grit. Again, they make these in different sizes and different grits. In the world of collision, I don't necessarily do the 5000 and 8000. I do like doing the 3000. This is gonna be the only step that you're gonna do wet. Again, can I buff over 15? Absolutely. Why do I use it? It looks better, it shines it up faster, and it takes less time and money. The only thing I have to do on this guy is throw it on my mini, or if I had a larger area, I could use it on a full-size 6-inch Dynabraid, and I just take a little bit of water, and this does not take much work, maybe 10-15 seconds. That area is almost done. And every time I step out a grit and go up in a grit, I want to step it out. So if I start off this big with, let's say, 1,000, then 15 will be bigger, then 3,000 will be bigger, or whatever you have. So again, this was an extremely dirty job for us. You can see how many places that we came in and took the dirt out and even leveled the peel out. But in all reality, we only had about 5 to 7 minutes in that whole process. Usually now what I like to do is use a mini pad, and I'll come in and use a white foam pad. Unfortunately, I don't have a foam pad today, so I'm gonna start with my woolly mammoth. I'm gonna go white, black, and then blue. So it'll be a 3-step process. Now we will have a complete video down the road of tips and tricks on blocking and buffing. Right now, this is just a quick tutorial. Let me just tell you this, there's a fine line between burning your clear and melting it back to the shine. Think about we're cooking something on the stove. If you don't get it hot enough, it never actually gets warm and it's not edible. You cook it too hot and you'll actually burn it. So please, if you don't have any buffing experience, watch our later video or somebody else's, because it's a little bit more technical than we're making it out to be. So I'm going to start with my step 1 from 3M and compound. I'm just going to throw a little down. And I'm just going to hit these 2 little spots. You have to get all of the scratches out, all of the dullness out with step 1. Right now, the compound is all slurry and blurry and I can't see anything. You have to make sure 100% of the scratches and imperfections are out with step 1, because step 2 and step 3 are not removing scratches. They're not refining scratches, and they're not going to bring up that shine that you need. So make sure you do your work with this one. The machine glaze, aka step 2, is very easy. I just take a little bit of machine glaze, I put it on either the vehicle, or in this case, I'm putting it on my pad, and all I want to do is I pretend it's wax. All right, I just kind of work it around. I don't use super high speeds. I kind of move it around and I just work it in, and I want to work this machine glaze in till it's 100% removed. And it does not take as much time as it does with step 1. Step 3 is a little bit different. It's not 100% necessary to remove all of that step 2, aka the machine glaze, but I'm going to do it anyway just to show you what that bottom edge looks like. For light colors or used car guys, you could probably ship it. And a lot of people don't do step 3. I really like the Ultra Fina. What I like about it, it's a non-wax wax. It's a water-soluble product. It beads the water well. It's very nice. Water will go off of it. And I don't use any wax for multiple reasons, but I absolutely am in love with this product. The bad thing about this product, it's very similar to step 2, but there's one major difference. This will never burn off. You have to have a clean, new microfiber and wipe it off with final inspection. it will just keep smearing and smearing and smearing it the longer you work in, and it looks like this. It doesn't take much time. I just work it in. A spot this small may take me 10 or 15 seconds. When I'm done, I take a different microfiber, one that has not been contaminated by the compound. I spray a little bit of the final inspection and I wipe it down, and that should be good to go. That's the whole process. Now, whether you're doing a denib and finesse on this BMW in a production or collision shop, or you're doing a full-blown restoration or a custom job like we're doing on our 69 Roadrunner, the processes are not night and day different, but they are different for a reason. Which tip or trick did you like best? Which tip or trick did you like worse? Make sure that you follow, subscribe, and comment on what videos you want to see and what tricks you like. We've got the block video coming out soon, and make sure you watch the end of our video because we'll have a couple tips and tricks at the end of it. From David and Gary at Refinish Media, we really appreciate your support, we appreciate your comments and your follows, and until the next time, thanks for watching. One of the products that I really like that's new to me is this Kovac starter kit. And you can go out and buy different papers too. What I like about this is if you're talking about denibbing and finessing, it comes with these little blocks of different sizes and stick-it paper in a bunch of different grits. They're easy to hang on to and they're great just for denibbing and finessing. Check these out, they're definitely gonna be worth your time. There's going to be people that say, oh, you're only using 3M Perfected system because they're paying you. 3M's not paying us anything. You know what? We're not for sale. We like what we like, and I've been using 3M for years, and I think they make a great product, arguably one of the best. If you're not using 3M, I'd love to know what system you think is the best. We use a lot of Rupes as well. We use these for our show cars. We're going to demonstrate how to do this and how to use their system because it is completely different than the traditional buffing that we grew up in learning on. So this system right here, we're going to demonstrate later in life. But 3D is a very good system and it's very popular. So if you think we're getting paid by 3M, you can think again. We use whatever system that we think is best, and we like to show every different line out there that's worth showing. We're not about hate, we're all about spreading knowledge and spreading love. Before the Eastwood denib tool and before the Fez tool, believe it or not, we use these little Meguiar pumice blocks. Now, I don't really use these anymore, but in all reality, they work. So if you have some of these kicking around the shop, and the philosophy behind these, you could get them in different grits, and I would always write on them with a Sharpie what they are, because this one's still new. It says 1500 grit, but they wear off over time, is I would keep them soaking in water, and this was our Fez tool. This was our Eastwood denibbing tool before that technology came along. They worked okay. Tell me if you've ever used these or if you're still using these. Who makes the best blocks in the world? David and I have been working for the last 30 days testing every major manufacturer out there. So far we've got the 3M blocks, the Dura blocks, the Wonder blocks by Motor Guard, Next Level blocks we just got in out of Canada, we're loving these. The Lucky blocks, they're from America, we love these. Of course we've got our linear blocks that have always been kind of the king, and then now we got the True Flex sanders, that these might actually change the game. So which block is going to win? Who really does make the best block out there? Which blocks would you like to see added to this list?